After 60, your cortisol should drop to its lowest point while you sleep, but something is spiking it at 2 or 3 a.m. and pulling you out of the deep sleep your body desperately needs every single night. Research confirms that when blood sugar crashes in the middle of the night, your adrenal glands treat it as an emergency and release cortisol to stabilize it. That cortisol surge is what jolts you awake. And the foods that cause that blood sugar crash are sitting on your dinner plate every evening. In this video, we are going through 8 specific foods that are doing exactly that. By the end, you will know exactly what to stop eating before bed to keep your cortisol quiet and finally sleep through the night. Number 8. Dark chocolate. This is the one that will probably surprise you the most, and for good reason. Dark chocolate has been celebrated for years as a heart-healthy, antioxidant-rich food, and during the day, that reputation is largely deserved. But eating it in the evening is a completely different story for your cortisol and your sleep. Dark chocolate, especially varieties that are 70% cacao or higher, contains 2 compounds that directly stimulate your adrenal glands. The first is caffeine. A single ounce of dark chocolate contains between 12 and 25 milligrams of caffeine. That might sound small, but caffeine at any dose stimulates your adrenal glands to produce cortisol. One strong cup of coffee can raise cortisol by 30 to 50% in sensitive individuals, and dark chocolate works through the same pathway. The second compound is something called theobromine, which is a natural stimulant found only in cacao. Unlike caffeine, which clears your system in about 5 to 6 hours, theobromine lingers longer and keeps gently stimulating your nervous system well into the night. Together, these 2 stimulants keep your cortisol elevated at exactly the time it should be winding down. After 60, your adrenal glands become more reactive to stimulants. The same amount of caffeine that had minimal effect on you in your 40s can have a noticeably stronger effect on your cortisol response now. That increased sensitivity combined with naturally declining melatonin production after 60 means even a small evening dose of dark chocolate can disrupt the hormonal conditions your body needs to stay in deep sleep. If you eat dark chocolate as an evening treat thinking it is a healthy choice, your 2 or 3 a.m. wake-up might not be random. The stimulant compounds from that chocolate are reaching their peak effect right in the middle of your sleep cycle. If you want something sweet in the evening, a small handful of fresh berries or a piece of fruit earlier in the evening gives you sweetness without the stimulant compounds that keep cortisol elevated overnight. Save the dark chocolate for the morning when a cortisol boost is actually what your body is designed to handle. The next food on this list is one of the most common evening treats, and the mechanism by which it wakes you up at 3 a.m. is something you have probably never had explained to you. Number 7. Ice cream. Ice cream feels like one of the most innocent evening pleasures. A bowl before bed, something comforting and familiar. But what happens inside your body in the hours after you eat it is one of the clearest examples of how food directly triggers a cortisol spike in the middle of the night. Ice cream is a combination of rapidly absorbing sugar and saturated fat. The sugar causes a sharp blood glucose spike within 30 minutes of eating. Your body releases insulin to bring that spike down. The problem is that insulin often overcorrects, especially after 60 when your body's glucose regulation is less precise than it used to be. That overcorrection drives your blood sugar below a healthy range in the early hours of the morning, typically between 2 and 4 a.m. Your adrenal glands detect that low blood sugar as an emergency. They respond by releasing cortisol and adrenaline to signal your liver to release stored glucose and raise your blood sugar back up. That cortisol and adrenaline surge is biological and automatic. It does not care that you were sleeping. It wakes you up because that is what it is designed to do when blood sugar drops too low. After 60, insulin sensitivity declines and blood sugar regulation becomes less precise. The same bowl of ice cream that might have caused a modest overnight blood sugar dip in your 40s can now cause a more dramatic drop that triggers a stronger cortisol response. That is why your nighttime waking may have gotten worse over the years without any other obvious explanation. If you notice you wake up feeling alert and unable to fall back asleep, that wired feeling is cortisol and adrenaline doing exactly what they are designed to do. The problem is not that your body is broken. It is that something you ate triggered the response. If you want a late evening snack, A small amount of protein with a complex carbohydrate, like a few crackers with nut butter or a small portion of Greek yogurt, gives your body a slower, steadier energy release that does not create the overnight crash that ice cream does. The next food combines several different cortisol triggering mechanisms at the same time and is something you have probably eaten for dinner more times than you can count. Number 6. Pizza. Pizza might be the most effective cortisol-disrupting food on this list, not because any single ingredient is catastrophic, but because it combines 4 separate sleep and cortisol-disrupting mechanisms in one meal. Understanding why pizza is so problematic helps you understand what to look for in any meal you eat in the evening. The first mechanism is the refined white flour crust, which spikes blood sugar rapidly and sets up the same overnight crash and cortisol response we described with ice cream. The second is the saturated fat from cheese and processed meats, which slows digestion significantly. Your body is already working at reduced digestive capacity while you sleep, and forcing it to process a high-fat meal on top of that keeps your core body temperature elevated and your cortisol higher than it should be at night. The third mechanism is a compound found in processed meats like pepperoni and sausage called tyramine. When your body breaks down tyramine, it triggers your adrenal glands to release a hormone that puts your body on alert. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure rises, and your brain gets a signal to stay awake. It is the last thing you want happening inside your body when you are trying to stay in deep sleep. The fourth mechanism is the sodium content. Research from the European Society of Endocrinology confirms that high sodium intake before bed contributes to disrupted and fragmented sleep. High sodium raises blood pressure and increases the workload on your cardiovascular system at night, which elevates cortisol in response. After 60, your body processes each of these mechanisms more slowly and less efficiently. What took 4 hours to work through in your younger years might now take 6 or 7 hours, meaning the disruption to your cortisol and sleep happens deeper into your sleep cycle when you are least equipped to fall back asleep. If you want pizza, eat it at lunch when your body has the whole afternoon to process it. In the evening, choose meals that are lower in refined carbs, processed meats, and saturated fat so your body is not fighting multiple cortisol triggers at once. Number 5. High-sodium snacks. Crackers, salted nuts, chips, pretzels, packaged cheese. These are the foods that fill the evening hours easily. Convenient, satisfying, and seemingly harmless. But the sodium content in even a moderate evening snack is enough to disrupt your sleep and elevate your cortisol in ways that you feel at 2 or 3 a.m. And because the connection between salt and sleep is not something you have probably heard explained, you keep reaching for the same snacks night after night, wondering why you cannot sleep through. The mechanism is specific and well documented. When you eat a lot of sodium before bed, your blood becomes more concentrated with salt than it should be. Your brain detects that shift and treats it as a stress signal. It activates your body's stress response, which drives cortisol release. That is the chain reaction that disrupts your sleep. A study published by the European Society of Endocrinology specifically identified salty foods as among the worst foods for sleep quality, finding that they contributed to disrupted and superficial sleep in participants. The researchers described the sleep as shallow and easily broken, which is exactly the kind of sleep that leaves you waking up at 3 a.m. and lying there for an hour before falling back asleep. After 60, your kidneys process sodium less efficiently than they did when you were younger. Excess sodium stays in your bloodstream longer, which means that salt stress signal to your brain lasts longer and peaks later into the night. If you notice you wake up thirsty in the middle of the night, as well as being unable to fall back asleep, high-sodium evening snacking is very likely contributing to both. The thirst is your body trying to dilute the excess sodium. The waking is your cortisol responding to the osmotic stress it creates. Swap evening salty snacks for unsalted nuts, plain yogurt, or a small piece of fruit. Your cortisol and your sleep will respond within days of making that change consistently. Number 4. Processed packaged foods. Packaged baked goods, store-bought cookies, breakfast bars eaten as evening snacks, flavored crackers, and granola bars fall into a category that is particularly dangerous for your evening cortisol because they combine high refined sugar content with artificial sweeteners, preservatives, and inflammatory fats in ways that attack your sleep from multiple angles simultaneously. And because they are marketed as convenient, healthy options, you might eat them without a second thought. The blood sugar spike from processed packaged foods is particularly rapid because the refined carbohydrates in them have been stripped of the fiber and protein that would normally slow their digestion. Without that buffer, your blood sugar spikes sharply within 30 minutes of eating, and the overnight crash follows predictably in the early morning hours, triggering the adrenal cortisol response that wakes you up. Research has also found that for some people, artificial sweeteners directly trigger the body's stress response, increasing cortisol and adrenaline, even when no blood sugar spike is involved. This means that even zero-calorie processed snacks can wake you up at night, which becomes more significant after 60 when your adrenal glands become more reactive to triggers like these. The inflammatory fats found in many processed foods, including partially hydrogenated oils and refined seed oils, trigger a chronic inflammatory response that keeps cortisol elevated at a baseline level. Research links diets high in these fats to disrupted cortisol secretion patterns, meaning the damage is not just from one evening snack, but from the cumulative effect of eating these foods regularly over time. After 60, your body's ability to resolve inflammation quickly declines. What would have been a short-term cortisol bump in younger years can become a sustained overnight elevation that fragments your sleep repeatedly across multiple sleep cycles. If packaged foods are part of your evening routine, replacing them with whole food alternatives like fresh fruit, plain nuts, or a small portion of cheese with vegetables gives your cortisol the quiet evening environment it needs to let your sleep deepen. Number 3. Spicy foods. Spicy foods affect your cortisol and your sleep through a mechanism that is completely different from everything else on this list, and understanding it makes the disruption immediately clear. It is not about blood sugar. It is about your core body temperature. The heat compound in spicy food is called capsaicin. When you eat it, your body reacts as if your temperature has genuinely gone up. It starts trying to cool itself down through sweating and increased blood flow to the skin. All of that activity raises your body temperature at exactly the time your body needs it to be dropping for sleep to happen properly. Your body temperature falling in the evening is one of the main signals that triggers deep sleep. When spicy food raises your temperature, it works against that process and keeps your cortisol higher than it should be at night. A study from Michigan State University Extension specifically identified spicy foods as one of the key foods to avoid before bed for this reason. That temperature disruption can last for several hours after eating, meaning a spicy dinner can still be affecting your body hours after you have gone to bed. After 60, your body takes longer to cool down in the evening and longer to recover from anything that raises its temperature. Spicy food eaten at dinner can still be working against your sleep at midnight or later. If you enjoy spicy food, eat it at lunch rather than dinner. By evening, your body will have had time to process the heat compounds, and your temperature will be back on track in time for sleep. The next 2 items on this list are ones you might eat at dinner, thinking they are healthy choices. But the way they interact with your cortisol in the hours that follow is something that is keeping you awake far more often than you realize. Number 2. Heavy protein dinner. A large steak, a substantial chicken dinner, a heavy fish meal with multiple servings. High-protein evening meals are often associated with healthy eating, and for good reason. During the day, protein supports muscle maintenance and satiety. But eating a very large protein-heavy meal close to bedtime creates a digestive burden that elevates cortisol and disrupts deep sleep in ways that are specific to the aging body after 60. The mechanism is straightforward. Protein takes significantly longer to digest than carbohydrates or fat, and your digestion slows by up to 50% while you sleep. A large protein meal eaten 2 to 3 hours before bed means your body is still in active high-energy digestion mode hours after you have tried to fall asleep. That digestion process raises your core body temperature, keeps your metabolism running at a rate inconsistent with deep sleep, and signals your adrenal glands to maintain cortisol at a level that supports the metabolic activity of digestion rather than dropping to the nighttime low that deep sleep requires. Research has specifically identified high-protein evening meals as a contributing factor to disrupted cortisol patterns and nighttime waking. The digestion burden does not just affect sleep onset. It fragments sleep in the early morning hours, when your body would normally be in its deepest repair cycles. After 60, your digestion is significantly slower and less efficient than it was in younger years. The stomach empties more slowly, stomach acid production decreases, and the muscular contractions that move food through your digestive system become less vigorous. A meal that took 4 hours to fully process in your 40s might take 6 or more hours after 60, meaning a large protein dinner eaten at 7 p.m. is still being actively digested at 1 or 2 a.m. Keep your evening protein portions moderate and eat dinner at least 3 hours before bed. A smaller protein portion of 3 to 4 ounces, with plenty of vegetables and a small amount of complex carbohydrate, gives your body the nutrition it needs without the overnight digestive burden that keeps cortisol elevated. And now we come to number 1. The food category that is almost certainly on your plate every single evening, and that is responsible for more 3 a.m. wake-ups after 60 than anything else on this list. Number 1. Refined carbs and sugar. Refined carbohydrates and sugar sit at number 1 because they are probably the foods you eat most often in the evening, and because the mechanism by which they spike cortisol at night is the most direct, most well-researched, and most impactful of anything on this list. White bread, white pasta, white rice, pastries, sweetened cereals, sugary desserts, and anything made with refined flour all share the same fundamental problem. They digest rapidly into glucose, causing a sharp blood sugar spike. Your body releases insulin to bring that spike down. After 60, when insulin sensitivity has declined and blood sugar regulation is less precise, that insulin response frequently overcorrects. Your blood sugar drops below the normal range in the early hours of the morning. Your adrenal glands detect that drop as an emergency. They release cortisol and adrenaline to signal your liver to release stored glucose and raise your blood sugar back to a safe level. That response is automatic and involuntary. It does not matter that you were sleeping. It does not care that you need the rest. It wakes you up because that is exactly what it is designed to do. Multiple studies on diet and sleep confirm this mechanism. The blood sugar crash and cortisol release that follows is most pronounced when you eat refined carbohydrates without enough protein or fat to slow absorption, which describes a typical dinner of pasta, bread, or rice as the main course with little else on the plate to buffer the blood sugar impact. After 60, this mechanism becomes more powerful, not less. Declining insulin sensitivity means the blood sugar swings are larger. Declining adrenal regulation means the cortisol response to those swings is more pronounced. And declining melatonin production means you are already more vulnerable to cortisol disruption than you were at a younger age. Refined carbs at dinner create exactly the wrong hormonal conditions for the deep, uninterrupted sleep your body needs. Replace refined carbs at dinner with complex carbohydrates like sweet potato, brown rice, lentils, or whole grain options that digest more slowly and produce a gentler, steadier blood glucose response. Pair them with protein and healthy fat to further slow absorption. That combination gives your blood sugar the stability it needs to stay in a healthy range throughout the night, so your adrenal glands never get the emergency signal that wakes you up. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 8 foods surprised you the most? And are you going to make any changes to what you eat in the evening after watching this? Tell us in the comments below. We read every single one. And before you go, here is the simplest way to apply what you just learned. You do not need to change everything tonight. Just look at what you ate last evening and see if any of these 8 foods were on your plate or in your hand after 7 p.m. Start there. One change at a time is enough to give your cortisol the quiet evening it needs to let you sleep through the night. If you found this helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. Thanks for watching.